DAS Today is a presentation of the Descendants of American Slaves, Inc. with Dr. Gerald Higginbotham. For more information, visit descendantsofamericanslaves.com.
Welcome to DAS Today. I'm your host, Dr. Gerald Higginbotham, and boy, do we have a special guest for you. Oh, I'm so excited. I met this young man here about almost a year ago. Phenomenal. And when I say young, he's 78 years old. I look at it when you are compared to Moses and Methuselah, we all just young folk. And so I was really blessed to have our next guest that's going to be on the show. And you're going to be blessed by him, too. He is the founder of the American Slave Revolution. He's the author of 6 books. He's got one more book about to come out. I know the number 7 is a number of completion, so you might want to take your time finishing that book because God is not finished with you yet. I see some more books coming up out of you. His name is Norris Shelton. After today, he's going to be called the Good Doctor. We are going to grant him an honorary doctor's degree in humanity for his work in helping to heal the American slave culture. And so today I'd like to welcome to our show today. Welcome, Norris Shelton. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you for that beautiful welcome, Dr. Gerald.
Well, it's an honor to have you on the DAS Today show. Technically, this whole thing was inspired by after I had met you almost a year ago, and you shared with me a few things, and I hope you do with the audience here in just a moment. I just want to lay some foundation. It's all your fault, and you have to accept responsibility for this one. The DAS Today is a radio show based upon some of the things that going on with the descendants of American slaves. That's what DAS means, Descendants of American Slaves Today, because that culture has not really been acknowledged since it's been in existence. And so we've been off course. And so today we have the founder of the American Slave Revolution. I love him so much. Welcome to the show. Now, I've got some questions for you that was given to me about why did you do all of this? We're blaming you. Why did you make this happen? What brought it about, this thing that you have put in place here in America? Talk to us. Talk to my audience.
It was a profound revolution. And when you compare that to the evolution in America, you come up with some startling facts. Being a business person, I found out that descendants of American slaves are not African Americans. There's a huge difference there. And that is the difference that is tearing our country apart now. I say that in this regard. We have a group of people here in America that are misidentified. And Dr. King told us in his final message to head for the economic battlefield. That's what he told us right before he was assassinated. And I took those words and digested them, and took them apart and studied them for years. And being a business person, I figured out what he was saying. The economic battlefield is the business arena in America, pure and simple business. So you take that, and when he said head for the economic battlefield, I took off in that direction. And that's when I found out that the terminology African American does not represent descendants of American slaves. It does not represent my foreparents at all. My foreparents were named slaves at their initiation into America, their initiation into life as we know it. My foreparents were slaves in America. And that's vitally important. And I realized that America and the world is overlooking that fact that my foreparents were the ones who laid the foundation for America. My foreparents, the American slaves, put all this stuff together without labor. And when I realized that my foreparents were never paid for all that labor and all those years and the damage that had been done to descendants of slaves, I wondered who's supposed to do something about this mess. I thought that some of our leaders, and we all know them, were supposed to be doing something about this mess. And then I realized maybe they didn't understand what was going on. Maybe they were in the dark about what is really happening in America. Therefore, it became my duty to do something about it because I wasn't talking to anybody else. I didn't know anybody else that was thinking this way. And when I tried to explain it, it was so ambiguous until most people couldn't understand it. So I had to undertake this job myself. So to answer your question, it's a rough job, but somebody had to do it. So I just said I'd do it.
Well, I thank God
career.
You gave up your career.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I'm a manufacturer.
Okay.
And I was making automobile parts for Ford and GM and John Deere and all those conglomerates. And when I realized what was happening in America, I knew that a job like this, rectifying slavery, is something that has been in existence for hundreds of years and had been covered up and nobody realized what's really going on. I realized it would probably take 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, if that was enough time to do it. So realizing the time involved to do it, I just gave up my career and went to Kentucky and bought a building and just sit there and started writing day after day after day. I was just sitting there in the presence of God, just writing day after day. So I gave up my career in manufacturing and took up the career of rectifying slavery.
Wow. Well, you know what? You've got 6 books out in the marketplace right now. Well, technically, there's 2 now that's out in Amazon on Kindle, America's Little Black Book and the Renaissance Plan. In your book, and I'm encouraging my listening audience to get America's Little Black Book and the American Slave Inc. Renaissance Plan because I'm starting to use them. At first, when I met you, sir, I said, this is another crazy person talking this kind of stuff, black, and he said slaves, colored, Negro, and African American, and I said, he's 78 years old, but then I had to say, he's my elder, and I respect my elders. And then I said, for a person to take time out and put it in a book, now I heard it saying, you probably heard this too, that you want to hide it from some folk, put it in a book. But I'm one of those folks that like to read because I know that the readers will normally be the leaders. And I think that's probably been one of the deficits I see in our community, that our group don't read good information that is designed to empower them. But in your book, and I just want a couple things in there that just really bless. The whole book is such a blessing. But you had talked about on page 227, was Dr. King dream realized? What did you mean by that? I mean, I want to get it from your perspective. You know, one thing, I've read this book here and you put some questions in here that I'm looking down the road here of doing an hour session on each question because it was as the young folks say it was the bomb. That first question was Dr. King dream of freedom for all fulfilled? What did you mean by that?
Well, when Dr. King, right before he was assassinated, his last instructions to his followers, we were Negroes then, and we've had name changes all over the place because we've been searching for our true identity. Dr. King's last instructions to the Negroes was to head for the economic battlefield, children, and that is ambiguous to the average person. Well, and I was in business, and so it was kind of confusing to me also. What does that mean, head for the economic battlefield? Being a veteran, battlefield means place where you go and kill people, to me. But Dr. King was a nonviolent person. So when I heard those words and studied them and studied his writings, I realized that the leaders left standing after he was assassinated obviously didn't understand what he was saying either, because after he was assassinated, the Negro movement fell apart. We made no more progress. In fact, we went and changed our names almost the next day to African American.
We burned down the community.
Yeah, burned down the community in confusion because we had nobody to lead us or tell us better. Dr. King would have told us not to do that. So when I realized what he meant, that meant somebody had to change their direction. Direction had to be changed from going on down the African American road. We have to honor our leaders and build on the only foundation that we have, and that is slavery. And when you take that into consideration, you can understand what Dr. King was saying, and realizing that the other leaders didn't understand what he was saying, and I didn't consider myself a leader. I was a businessman. I realized that somebody had to step up. I told several of the leaders what I saw and what I understood. And as you say, they just laughed at me. No little crazy guy.
I laughed at you, brother, to be honest with you.
Well, that's normal.
But I ain't laughing now because...
I got busy writing. God came into my life and told me to write down, start writing, and he would tell me what to write. Well, I didn't know anything to write except my own experiences. So I started writing my experiences and taking notes. And when I got ready to publish the first book, I referred to the notes, and from that came America's Little Black Book, from the notes that I was taking. God was speaking to me directly, but I was thinking another way. But that is how we came up with America's Little Black Book. That is our gift from God.
I want to tell you, this book here is phenomenal. And I love the Bible. You know, I'm a Bible scholar. I believe the Bible with all my heart, the basic instructions before leaving Earth. But I think that America's Little Black Book should be in every home in America. So talk a little bit about America's Little Black Book.
America's Little Black Book was dubbed the American Slave Bible by my editor, who's a white fella, and he dubbed it the American Slave Bible. America's Little Black Book explains who we are in detail and how we arrived at that identity and this culture. Then it lays out a basic path for us to follow to true freedom. When Dr. King was leading us, he always talked about making it to freedom and things like that. When he was assassinated, we thought we was free. Well, America's Little Black Book explains that we are not free. America's Little Black Book explains that when the slaves were run off the plantation, I don't call it freedom, I say they fired us and kicked us off the plantation because they did that with no reparations, no money, no leadership, baptized in ignorance. And here's a whole culture of people that don't even know who they are, left there to fend for themselves. And America's Little Black Book explains all of this, how it happened, why it happened, when it happened, and then it explains what we're supposed to do about it in a peaceful way. That's the reason slavery's never been dealt with, and America's Little Black Book goes into detail on this. Slavery hasn't been dealt with because nobody knew how to deal with it. And it's a kind of scary topic because of the emotion involved in it. So America's Little Black Book lays out a perfect path for us to follow. But we have to read it and understand it. And the leadership has to keep reading it. Because I've talked to you several times and you've read it several times, and I'm still reading it myself, even though I wrote it. But America's Little Black Book is the Descendants of American Slaves Bible. This is not replacing any other Bible. But every culture have their own Bible. Every culture. There's many Bibles in existence. But it's important for us to understand that America's Little Black Book was written especially for those dark-skinned humans who were bred in America. Now, a lot of people think, and America's Little Black Book explains it, a lot of people think the slaves came from Africa. And that's fuzzy. The people who started our race came from Africa. They were Africans. But the seeds was planted in American soil, and the harvest was slaves, American slaves. And that's who we are. We're the descendants of American slaves. And America's Little Black Book lays it all out for us in understandable language.
Now, could you tell me how long you've been working at this process?
To write America's Little Black Book, it took me 15 years to write it. to write America's Little Black Book. That's the first book. The reason it took me so long or whatever is because I was learning this as I was writing, because God was speaking to me as I wrote. And I had to hire an editor to teach me how to write. I'm not a writer, as I said, I'm a business person. So I had to hire someone to teach me how to write. And at $100 an hour, it took quite a while to learn how to write and construct words. So it took, for the first book, 15 years. And the other 5 books came pretty fast.
Now, you've written a book called The American Slave Inc. Renaissance Plan, The Next Step Forward, Building a Link to True Emancipation. Could you talk a little bit about that book?
Sure. After writing 5 books, it was my obligation to write the plan. Most of the time, writers, when they're writing about our people, our culture, the American slave culture, it's mostly just rehashing what someone else has already written, or it's complaining about the situation. The American Slavery Renaissance Plan goes beyond. It doesn't complain. It just explains what is, and then it gives us a roadmap how to correct the situation. It's a plan in itself. It has a price tag. It has directions, everything that a plan must have. It doesn't have a lot of complaining in it, because once you understand slavery, you understand that slavery is the womb through which our culture was bred. And that'll take a little thought there. But slavery is the womb through which the American slave culture was bred. That's vitally important. That takes a lot of the hate away from slavery, because for God to create us, like all humans, we come through a womb. So slavery in America was very, very necessary. And the American Slave Renaissance Plan points out that slavery worked. Slavery worked. Look
Yes,
at America.
it did.
Big and beautiful and strong, proud America, all because of slavery.
Well, that in itself there, when you look at it from that perspective, it paints a whole new different light. Now, I want to dig into this book here, the Renaissance Plan, because I saw in there, it talks about a revolution, yes or no. What did you mean by that?
A revolution, most people, when they hear the word revolution, they think about war and fighting and killing and all that kind of stuff. The Renaissance Plan, the revolution is a revolution of the mind, and that's a different animal altogether. We're revolutionizing the mindset of America. We're upgrading it. That's the change. That's the revolution that we must have, is a peaceful, intelligent revolution. The descendants of American slaves were bred to be ignorant. And we don't want to get upset about that, but that's just the truth, because they wouldn't allow our culture to read and write. And the end result of not reading and writing, being restricted from reading and writing, the end result is ignorance. And so that's what they were breeding descendants of American slaves to be, is ignorant. And a revolution of the mind is what has to take place. We have to understand what happened, understand why it happened. Now, all this is information and intelligence. And then we have to take this into consideration here also. When you take a flower and put it under a bush so the sun can't get to it, it will be stunted. But once you remove the clouds and let the sun to that flower, it will spring up beautiful. And that is the descendants of American slaves. See, now that the information is coming forward, the intelligence, descendants of slaves will sprout beautifully. This is ordained by God.
You think that's what he meant by the last being first and the first being last?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because here's what my take on this book here. One of the beautiful, and also too, I'm coming from a spiritual side of it as well as and I'll get to the economics here in a minute. But what I gathered with slavery was 2 parts. It was both mental as well as physical. It took a civil war to take the physical chains off of us when we were the American slave culture, because we did have a culture on those plantations. But the mental chains are still on our minds. And I thought I saw in here, you talked about post-traumatic slave syndrome. Was that what you meant about the mental change still on the mind?
Absolutely. The Civil War caused the physical change to be taken off. But the mental change, or the mental condition, or however you want to phrase it, has never even been addressed. Nobody has even talked about it in the sense that they knew what to do about it. We can all complain about things, but the Renaissance plan shows us what to do about the mental chains of slavery. The first way you have to remove those mental chains is understand that they are there, and then you have to admit that they are there. Most people they shy away from the idea that they are ignorant. We don't like that. We don't like to think that we're ignorant, but we're all ignorant of something. So this is what we're in the process of doing right now, is removing the mental chains. And as we learn, the chains come off. And that's the syndrome, the slavery syndrome. You know, they say the slavery mindset, slave mentality, and all of these kind of things. They're real because we inherited them. And it's our responsibility to correct the negative after effects of slavery.
Boy, you said it's our responsibility. I didn't hear you say it was their responsibility. Did I hear you correctly? Say it's our? We're the ones that's going to have to take the chains off? We're the one that's going to have to renew our mind? We can't let other folk do it for us?
No. We can't. And see, then you take us straight into the business end of it, the economic end of it. And that's where Dr. King told us to go to the economic battlefield. You see, in economics, everything's fair. In economics, it's all about economics. It's not about right and wrong. It's about economics. When it comes to right and wrong, you know, they got jails and stuff like that for that. But in economics, it's our responsibility, because in the business arena, no corporation cares really what happens to other corporations. And that's why we incorporated American slaves into the fabric of America, because it's we have to do this. That means our leaders have got to put on their thinking caps and start thinking instead of complaining. We've got to think our way out of this. And that's what we've been working together. That's what we've been doing ever since I came together. We've been thinking our way out of this.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to do. We have to work together. We have to come together and start thinking about the masses of our people instead of thinking about individuals. And that's the first thing that I did, was stop making money for me and started making it for my people, or figuring a way that my people can make money. That's what Dr. King was trying to tell us.
So what you're saying here is that we're going to have to park our individualism and come together around this concept. First, identify who we are and get that piece in place, right, what I'm hearing. And then we need a plan of action to go out to the economic battlefield.
Absolutely.
So what should be some of the next step? Because we only have just a few more minutes here. And boy, this time is just going by so fast. And this is having you on the DAS show today, because it's so relevant, this information, that in real time with Ferguson and with what's going on out there in Baltimore and now up in Milwaukee. This is real time stuff that we're dealing with. So what are some of the things that we need to do immediately, some of the immediate actions?
The thing that we need to do immediately is exactly what we are already doing. When Dr. King told us to go to the economic battlefield, we found out that the economic battlefield is the business arena, and the Chamber of Commerce is the headquarters. So that's what we're doing right now. We're getting ready to take it straight to the Chamber of Commerce and right in your face, because we have the answer. We're not going there complaining to the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to the Chamber of Commerce and explain to them what needs to be done. We're not going to ask them what to do. We're going to explain to them what needs to be done. We have it all in writing. We have a concrete plan where rectifying slavery will not hurt America. That's what everybody's been afraid of. Thought it would bankrupt America. Oh, no.
Well, why the Chamber of Commerce?
The Chamber of Commerce is where all of the businesses that sprang from slavery, that's where they meet. That's their connection point. Chamber of Commerce. And all of the businesses that sprang from slavery, all these big, powerful businesses in the world, all these huge banks and insurance companies and all these places that have billions and billions of dollars, they sprang from slavery, and they belong to the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, God, you're getting me nervous here, because you think they'll let us come to the Chamber of Commerce and do what?
Well, they're not. We just want to go there and explain our situation to them. You see, the money is already in place.
But for what? But for what?
The money is in place for rectification.
Is this racial business that we're talking about?
Yes, it's racial business, but it's still business.
Okay.
It just happens to affect a race of people. And these things, the races are spelled out in minority programs and all these things. You know, our people don't know a lot about this, but minority programs are put in place so that different races can get what they deserve, and to make sure that different races are not discriminated against in business. And all of this stuff takes place at the Chamber of Commerce. We never knew this before. We never had leaders that would go out and find out what's holding us back and figure out ways to move us forward. The Chamber of Commerce is where all we really need to do is just listen to Dr. King. He told us what to do. He said, go to the economic battlefield. 2 words. It took me years to untangle them. So I knew other leaders didn't know it, and I was right there on the economic battlefield. And once I untangled it, I said, oh, this is what Dr. King was trying to tell us. And that's what we're going to have to start doing. We're going to have to instill and install proper leadership. We've got to stop these people from misleading our people. All these people that's hollering about their leaders. You've got all these organizations that we think are fending for us. They are fending for African Americans. They won't even use our proper name. Now, don't get me wrong. I love African Americans. Some of them are my best friends. Can't understand a lot of what they're saying because they're from Africa. But we have got to raise up our own leaders, and we've got to start them right. We can't just keep letting leaders step up and lead our people just because they want to. Our people need to choose their own leaders.
Well, how do you find leaders? And I'm going to give you 2 questions because we're running out of time, and see if you can answer them in one. How do you find leaders? And number 2, how do we unify to be led? What's the criteria?
The criteria to finding a leader is knowing the truth, and the truth shall set you free. You see, we have never known the truth, so we didn't know where to look for leaders anyway. When a leader tells you the truth, you recognize that. When I wrote the book and you read it, you recognize that immediately.
Well, because, see, I'm a leader. A leader is an influencer, because everything rises and falls on leadership. And DAS equal truth today.
Amen. Amen.
And today is...
A real leader recognizes the truth. A real leader. You can't fool a real leader.
That's right. I can't be fooled, Doc. I know everything. You know, I've been through some of the best leadership training in the country. One of my mentors, John Maxwell, who has put his hands on me. So I know about leader, and I see you as a leader. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so you're right. I believe we're going to have to find and develop leaders and grow them so that they can begin to reach their maximum potential. Because that's really what, success is. And so then we have to unify them so that we can be able to lead them. There's a lot being said, but people now really need to be led.
That's right. And I'll say this, because we're running out of time, and we have to be very careful. When we choose leadership, it don't have to be black leadership. We're not that kind of.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be black leadership. You see, this is economics where we're going now. We want some economic leaders who can lead our people. If a white person, and this is in America's Little Black Book, if a white person or anybody can lead descendants of American slaves in the right direction, we're not going to deny their leadership, because after all, we have a biracial couple in the White House.
Okay. He's a true.
Barack Obama, and I love him so much.
Me too.
He's an African American. His wife is a descendant of American slaves.
Hey. Well, Brother Norris, all right, I'm giving you a new title now. You have earned the doctor, Dr. Norris Shelton. You will have to come back. You got to be a regular on the show. We got to have you back on DAS Today. Hey, it's been a privilege and an honor. Well, there's one more thing I got to say to you before we go, because you got me so excited, and my producer is saying, is there anything else you want to share before we go? What about the website?
I want to share, but I'll say this. Anytime you want me on the show, just say so, and I'm at your disposal.
Oh, I love you, leader. That's why you're the president of the American Slave Nation. You're the president of ASI. And how can people connect with you?
There's so much information out there online now, thanks to you and other people. So they can call me direct at area code 502-939-6688, area code 502-939-6688. They can contact Dr. Gerald Higginbotham, because Dr. Gerald Higginbotham is the national spokesperson for the Descendants of American Slaves, and he's the senior vice president of American Slaves Incorporated.
All right.
Well, spiritual advisor for the American Slave Nation.
Hallelujah. And it's a privilege and an honor to have had you on to the DAS Today show. But give us your personal website again.
www.slaves-usa.com. www.slaves-usa.com.
We got to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for taking time out your busy schedule to be interviewed today, Dr. Norris Shelton. And we'll be back.
Thank you very much, sir. I love you all. I love all of my people. I love America. God bless America.
Amen.
And I'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Peace and blessings to you, sir.
Same to you.
You can get all the notes and comments from today's shows out at www.descendantsofamericanslaves.com. And I want to say thank you for taking time out your busy schedule to ride with us today. Please send us your questions, your comments, your thoughts, and we're on our way. Fasten your seatbelt. We have been cleared for takeoff. This is the Captain Good Doctor speaking, and we say welcome aboard.
To learn more about Descendants of American Slaves, Inc., visit descendantsofamericanslaves.com for the blog, more about the organization, to donate, hear testimonials, and become enlightened on the plight and promise of descendants of American slaves.